Field for the ninth race, in behind the Home Hardware Building Center starting gate. It's post time for the finale. Ninth and final, top of the stretch, Slightly Twisted, Whistling Cricket, Atlas Marigold, Kid'em Image. Bet on Jessica, Hardy Mill Joe, and Speaking of Shadow. They're off and pacing, Slightly Twisted, out from the rail, grabs that early lead. Whistling Cricket on the limb second, inside third. Speaking of Shadow, caught wide there fourth. Into the turn is Bet on Jessica, fifth along the rail for Atlas Marigold. Getting away sixth is Kid'em Image, beating away Hardy Mill Joe, who trails the field. On to the Redland Farms backstretch. First time headed to the quarter, led by Slightly Twisted. Out there clear by 4 open lights, with Speaking of Shadow in pursuit second. Whistling Cricket travels the rail third. Next in line, that's Bet on Jessica, looking at it from 4. Back there, a gapped out Atlas Marigold is racing in 5, followed by Kid'em Image. To the outside from the back goes Hardy Mill Joe. 28 3/5 seconds the opening quarter. Continuing off the top turn, Slightly Twisted and Speaking of Shadow, they sit 1-2. Followed out the rail third by Whistling Cricket. Then Bet on Jessica. He's holding down the 4 spot. Up into 5 now comes Hardy Mill Joe. Back in 6, Atlas Marigold. To the outside from the back goes Kid'em Image. They travel into the lower turn. Continuing on to the Redland Farms backstretch for the final time. Slightly Twisted, the one to take down. He's out there by 2 on Speaking of Shadow, the half, 58 2. Whistling Cricket along the rail. He's pacing along in 3. Up on the outside into contention now. Hardy Mill Joe shows 4th, 5th inside. That is Bet on Jessica. Then back to the treading pair, Atlas Marigold and Kid'em Image, as they arrive at the 3 quarters. Up and out of the pocket goes Speaking of Shadow. Up alongside Slightly Twisted. Speaking of Shadow, Slightly Twisted at the rail. Those two on even terms as they continue on to the 7/8. Then well back in 3, that's Whistling Cricket outside 4th. As they continue off the turn is Hardy Mill Joe. 3 quarters paced in 1:27 3. They make the final turn. Speaking of Shadow on the outside is taken over. That's Slightly Twisted now. Second, Speaking of Shadow, up to win the finale. Second is Slightly Twisted, and Whistling Cricket hangs in there for third. A mile in 1:56 3/5. Back in the Woodmere Farms Winners Enclosure was number 8, Speaking of Shadow, winner of the 9th race, 4-year-old mare by Artspeak, owned by Josh McDonald, Little Pond PEI, trained and driven by Darren Crow. For Darren, that's his third winning drive on today's program. Speaking of Shadow, pacing to a lifetime best of 156 and 3/5.